At exactly 4:27 a.m., deep inside Moscow's fortified district, silence wrapped around the General Staff headquarters. But that silence shattered in an instant. Ukrainian forces unleashed a storm unlike anything the city had ever witnessed. From multiple directions came a terrifying mix of weapons: UJ-26 kamikaze drones, Flamingo cruise missiles, T-72 tanks, Patriot PAC-3 interceptors on standby, electronic warfare trucks, mine-deploying robots, and even sensor-fitted ravens gliding above. Drones skimmed rooftops barely above tree line. Missiles hugged the ground as if crawling across the terrain, while robotic crawlers pushed into choke points with TM-62 mines strapped to their bellies. This wasn't a diversion. This was a full-force strike, aimed straight at Russia's nerve center. In seconds, calm dissolved into chaos. A brutal lesson in modern warfare was unfolding. Don't blink. The secret behind this assault is about to be revealed. Subscribe now and share your thoughts below. The first wave was only the beginning. As drones swarmed low and crawlers dug into choke points, a second storm took shape high above. Ukrainian commanders had prepared a layered aerial package. Patriot batteries stood at the outskirts, radars sweeping the skies. Above them, Su-35 fighters carved air corridors at 20,000, 30,000 feet. Swarms of FPV drones, flying at blistering 120 mph, darted below. They weren't there to destroy. Their mission was to jam sensors and bait Russian defenses. The impact was immediate. Pantsir and S-400 crews, overwhelmed by the sheer density of signals, began firing early. Explosions lit the dawn sky. Operators panicked as radar screens filled with clutter, drones weaving, missiles vanishing behind buildings, and electronic noise drowning every channel. Moscow's airspace became a twisted battlefield of streaking interceptors, flares bursting and phantom signals. Russian fast jets roared from runways, but Ukraine's drones were designed to be expendable. They absorbed missile fire, blew apart radar nodes, and left invisible corridors for the real strike to push through. And through those corridors, the Flamingo cruise missiles crept forward, hugging rooftops at just 100 feet above ground. What began as a blinding drone wave had now transformed into a shield for the decisive blow. Meanwhile, the city's streets erupted. The assault was no longer just overhead. It was now pressing directly onto Moscow's ground defenses. Columns of Ukrainian T-72 tanks rolled in staggered lines, each vehicle spaced 50-75 yards apart to avoid concentrated fire. Behind them, electronic warfare trucks jammed radios and severed Russian targeting networks. In the shadows, robotic mine layers, machines no larger than compact cars, crawled deliberately into storm drains, subway shafts, and narrow service alleys. Their task: plant explosives and seal reinforcement routes. Every passing minute meant another road closed, another bridge ready to collapse. Smaller robotic scouts skittered into tunnels and beneath bridges, wiring shaped charges that would bring them down on command. Infantry advanced alongside machines. Soldiers with suppressed rifles and shoulder-launched rockets cleared buildings block by block, while drones hovered above and robots scouted intersections. Wherever Russian patrols tried to regroup, a sudden mix of drones and explosive robots forced them back in confusion. By 5 a.m., the armored ring had pushed within just a few hundred yards of the General Staff's outer wall. Every street was a trap, every building a firing nest, every alley seeded with demolition charges. The fight was no longer distant. The battle was now knocking at Moscow's gates. But the most devastating blow came in a form Russia never expected: the invisible war above their heads. As tanks pressed close, Ukrainian planners unleashed precision kamikaze drones not at soldiers, but at Moscow's electronic eyes, flying barely above rooftops, guided by inertial systems and visual beacons. UJ-26 drones struck with surgical precision. Their payloads were light, 50 to 70 pounds of explosives, but their targets were critical. The first wave tore into power substations feeding radar arrays, cutting cables and delaying current. For radar crews, that meant 2 to 3 seconds of blind screens. In war, where milliseconds matter, those seconds were lethal. Moments later, more drones crashed into communications cabins linked to S-400 batteries. Operators watched their scopes flicker, misreading drones as birds, missiles as shadows. By the time systems rebooted, it was too late. The Flamingo missiles had already crossed the radar horizon only 15 miles out. Streaking toward Moscow at nearly 600 miles or more, Russian officers tried desperate intercepts. But geometry betrayed them. Low-flying missiles, masked by city blocks and smoke, appeared only when overhead. Panzer units fired frantically, their tracers streaking across the dawn. But lock-ons failed, confused by false returns and overlapping echoes. On the ground, Ukrainian troops cheered as the flamingos thundered past treetops, hugging avenues like shadows. The drones hadn't destroyed Russia's defenses. They had bent them, twisted their timing, and broken their rhythm. And in that broken rhythm, the missiles slid through untouched. The window was small, only seconds of blindness, but Ukrainian commanders seized it with an unexpected twist. From concealed launch cages, flocks of trained ravens burst into the sky, each carrying reflective tags and sensors. On Russian radar screens already drowning in static, the birds appeared as a fresh swarm of phantom drones. Interceptors were wasted on empty air. At the same time, smoke-generating drones cloaked the entire compound, rolling thick clouds across streets, bending lasers and blurring thermal sights. The proud fortress of Russia's command now looked like a haunted ruin, flickering behind waves of gray. Beneath this veil, robotic sappers crept forward. Machines the size of lawnmowers crawled toward gates and service tunnels, carrying shaped charges. At 5:12 a.m., synchronized blasts shook the rear of the compound. Concrete barriers cracked, steel doors warped. Through the ruptures, infantry squads slipped inside, shadows moving within shadows. Russian defenders fired wildly into the fog, but every muzzle flash betrayed their own position. Above them, ravens wheeled. Around them, drones buzzed. Beneath them, robotic charges detonated. The illusion was complete. Wings, smoke, and chaos bound Russia's defense into knots. And through that illusion, the path to Moscow's command was pried open, but Russia struck back. From the outskirts, convoys of BTR-82s and BMP infantry carriers thundered down highways at 40 mph, with artillery and fuel trucks trailing. Their intention was clear: overwhelm Ukraine with sheer manpower and steel before the command hub collapsed. But those roads were no longer theirs. Minutes earlier, mine-deploying robots had seeded the approaches. As the first convoy entered a choke point, charges hidden in service tunnels detonated. Asphalt cracked, overpasses collapsed. The lead BTR exploded, blocking the road. Others swerved into side streets, only to hit more mines. Above, Mi-28 and K-52 gunships swept into the fight, diving toward Ukrainian armor. But from the outskirts, hidden Patriot batteries locked on. In brilliant flashes, 2 helicopters disintegrated mid-air, their flaming wrecks slamming into parking lots. Survivors staggered from wrecks, only to be cut down by advancing Ukrainian squads pressing through the fog. The clash turned brutal. T-72s met Russian armor head-on in narrow boulevards. RPGs fired from windows at point-blank ranges. Infantry fought room to room, the haze blurred vision, forcing close-quarters combat, where Ukraine's smaller, faster teams held the edge. At 5:30 a.m., the district had become a cauldron. Reinforcements poured in, but every bridge they crossed collapsed. Every street they tried was blocked with wrecks. Mines riddled intersections. Air defenses fired at ghosts, wasting missiles on ravens and drone echoes. By 5:41 a.m., the decisive strike came. 2 Flamingo cruise missiles masked by fog and static skimmed barely above rooftops before slamming into the compound. The first missile tore through the command bunker, its warhead crippling the energy backbone. Lights flickered and then steadied, but nothing worked. The second missile followed seconds later, smashing into the fiber optic hub that linked Moscow's units to high command. Screens went black, radios hissed with silence. Officers shouted into dead channels, unaware their network was already severed. Outside, Ukrainian tanks closed the perimeter. Infantry raised blue and yellow flags over captured checkpoints. Drones circled, live streaming the inferno, Russia's proudest fortress engulfed in flames and static silence. The twin strikes achieved what armor and infantry alone could. Not they gutted the fortress from within. The general staff still stood in stone, but its heartbeat was gone. Servers dead, radios silent, officers cut off from every front. Strategically, Moscow's ability to command multi-front operations evaporated overnight, leaving its forces isolated and scattered. Above it all, a massive column of smoke curled thousands of feet into the sky, the mark of Russia's nerve center brought to its knees. And so, one haunting truth remained: if the capital's command hub could fall, was any bastion truly secure?